So on Purim we have four main mitzvahs. What are the four main mitzvahs of Purim? To hear the Megillah. We hear the Megillah by night and by day. To give Mishloach Manos. Mishloach Manos, to give at least two types of food to a friend. You give Matanos and Avyonim, you give 2 coins to 2 poor people. And then you have Sudas Purim, the meal of Purim. All the mitzvahs of Purim we do by day. In other words, Mishloach Manos we have to do during the day. Matanos Avyonim we have to do during the day. The meal of Purim we have to do during the day. The reading of the Megillah we do by night and by day. We do it twice. Right? So, we read the Megillah by night, and then we go home, we eat a meal, but the main meal of Purim we have to eat the next day. We have to at least wash and have, some bread before Shkia, before sunset. Then we have the other mitzvahs of Purim, like Mishloach Manos, Matanos Avyonim, the meal of Purim, we have them in mind. Purim in the morning when we say Shechianu for the reading of the Megillah, we say Shechianu before the reading of the Megillah. We make 3 brachas. Mikra Megillah, She'asa Nisim, and Shechianu. So when the Chazan says Shechianu, everybody has in mind. You're saying Shechianu, not just for the mitzvah of hearing the Megillah, but Shechianu for fulfilling the mitzvah of Mishloach Manos, Matanos and Avyonim, and the meal of Purim. Now, what's the minimal amount that you give for Mishloach Manos? So, Mishloach Manos, you have to give 2 types of food. It doesn't have to be 2 different brachas. If you give, let's say, an orange juice and a piece of and some gefilte fish, it's the same bracha. But it's 2. One is gefilte fish and one is orange juice. It's 2 separate types of food. It doesn't have to be separate brachas. It has to be 2 different types of food. And it's called monos. Mona means a portion. Mishloach monos. So there's a discussion how much is considered a portion. So there's different ways to look at it. But the Rebbe says at least minimal sheba minimal is at least it should be a kazayis altogether. And it's best, if possible, should at least be 2 kazaysim, that each type of food that you're giving should be a kazayis. And that's the minimal sheba minimal. Not the minimum, sorry. That's at least, if possible, at least the minimal is a kazayis with both types of food together. But at least, if possible, it should be 2 kazaysim. And the truth is, there's other pasim that give other amounts. Some people say that you have to give the word mona. The Rebbe spoke about it also. The Rebbe once had a whole sicha. The Rebbe said the word mana means a davar chashuv, a chashuv thing. It doesn't say to give achila or te'ima, something to taste. It says to give a mana a portion.
Yeah,
so,
some people say also not to give the giving svarim.
So it says giving svarim. I don't think you're yotz with giving svarim.
Yeah, they just do it as kahassos do something like that.
Svarim is brought down that you're not yotze with it. It's a nice thing to give, but it's not. Most people hold that you need to give food. But it says it has to be a money. It has to be a portion. So what is considered a portion? So there's many different ways to look at it. There's something what we call in halacha chaticha royal iskabed. When you have guests, you wouldn't give them a tiny pickle. You would give them something that's considered a chashuv portion. So something which is considered, when you're sending Mishloach Manos, it should be something which is considered ideally, in other words, to be the most mehudar, it should be something which is a chashuv portion. And some people say, for example, it should be like a shir of a suda, 3 eggs, 3 bayim of bread, 3 bread the size of 3 eggs. Now, what I always tell people is people have to keep in mind that the main mitzvah of Mishloach Manos is only to one person. So you don't have to give everybody. Today it's a big budget, Mishleach Manas and everything. The truth is, B'chlal, you're supposed to give more Matanas Lavyenim than Mishleach Manas, and I'm right. Spend your money more on Matanas Lavyenim than on Mishleach Manas. Today they have a new thing I hear this year, that you could set that you give Matanas Lavyenim in somebody's merit. So they send a guy, your Mishleach Manas, to the person is that you gave in his merit Matanas Lavyenim to this organization.
They've been doing that for a while. They used to give you a card that says instead of your Shachmanis, I gave $10.
In lieu of this,
Yeah.
we've given.
So it's a nice thought. Instead of having to pay money, it does. So I giving Matanas and Mishleach Manas, you fill the mitzvah with every few people.
So there's no hiddur mitzvah to give 10 people to Shachmanis.
No, it says you're supposed to give. There is a hiddur mitzvah to give to many people, but within the context of Mishleach Manas and Matanas Lavyonim, you're supposed to give. You're supposed to be marba in. It definitely does mean to be marba Mishleach Manas.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the reasons is you're being marba simcha v'reis by giving Mishleach Manas. You're increasing friendship and Avos Yisrael. And it says v'chol hamarba l'shloich l'reiyim meshubach. Whoever is marba to send to other people is meshubach. But nevertheless,
who said Meshubach?
this is the lashon of the mechaber. But nevertheless, it says that it's better to be marba. The lashon of the Rambam is that it's better to be marba in Matanas Lavyonim than in Mishloach Manas. But at any rate, because there's no greater simcha than being Sameach Anim.
Yeah, but if you, could you be Yotze both, or it has to be documented? Like, if you know there's an Ani who needs, who can use your food and stuff like
So
that.
then 100%.
So
If you give him, but you're not
Yotze.
too. It's considered Matanas Lavyonim. The question is whether it's considered Mishloach Manas also.
No, I'm saying you give him food.
That's the
Food is a
question.
very good present. You don't have to give him money, you give him food. But when you give him food, you're being Yotze Matanas Lavyonim. If you're going to give him food, you can't be Yotze. There's a whole discussion about this. A certain years in the Gemara, but with Pashtus, we do the Maskana, if I remember correctly, is we can't be Yotze both in one shot. In other words, you could give to one. Again, Mishloach Manas is Matanas Lavyonim is the two poor people. Mishloach two poor people each a pruta. Mishloach Manas is to give two types of food to one person. So you can give to three poor people. For one guy, you can be Yotze Mishloach Manas, and for the other two, Yotze Matanas Lavyonim.
Oh, so it should be the same guy.
Right. In other words, you can't kill two birds with one stone. You can't take a pack of Mishloach Manas here.
With
If you're
money.
having him in mind to give him Matanas Lavyonim, you can't. That's not Mishloach Manas. Mishloach Manas is you can give them food. Adrab, one of the reasons for Matanas Lavyonim is you're giving them money. They should have food for the meal of Purim. So there's nothing wrong giving them food. Adrab, it might be even better. B'chlal, you're going to give them money. You don't even know what it's going to always. You give them food, and they, you know that they can eat it. Hopefully, at least. So for one person, getting back to what I was saying, so there's no so the mitzvah to if it's a big budget for Mishloach Manas for one person to give a proper davar or chaticha royal skab to give you. So the one Mishloach Manas that you give should have the other ones at least place should have at least two kazeis and whatever it is. If the person doesn't have to if you can't give everybody the whole proper chaticha royal skab the whole meal. At least give to one person. Now, Matanas Lavyonim, like I mentioned before, Chol whoever's marba to give Matanas Lavyonim is Meshubach. Matanas at least a Shava Pruta. Now Shava Pruta today's day and age pays at least a nickel, a dime, a quarter. Again, there is an Indian, like I mentioned before, the saying by Mishloach Manas is supposed to give a davar chashav by Matanas Lavyonim. Some people say also that it should be given like the shear of Mishloach Manas, that it should be like the size of three eggs, whatever. Abu Khalif and at least give some money for a davar chashav for Matanas Lavyonim to two separate poor people. Today you have you can donate online also to all different worthy causes. There is an Indian that you should give it on Purim and it will reach the poor person on Purim. So that definitely has precedence to make sure to give it. There are people that collect on Purim to give to poor people on Purim itself.
Yeah, people
definitely has a milah definitely has a much bigger milah than giving it on Purim to an organization that will give it after Purim. Although it doesn't take away from people have that people have standard organization that they donate to on Purim, they should continue donating. There's a need to try to make sure at least 2 of Yoinim that get on Purim, and try to give it to organization that that they they give the beggars in 770. Sometimes they have more money than you do. You understand? They so it's not the people think that that's the ideal Levian. It's no longer has nothing to do with reality.
And some of them are not even Jewish.
Yeah. So if you want, you can give them a quarter, a nickel, a dime for the honor of the holiday. But if you want to,
A nickel is considered Shalakutta?
theoretically, maybe, but today's day and age, due to inflation, it's already a dime or a quarter. I don't know. That's from Nigei Mishleich Monaton Salvenim. Again, there's discussions, like I mentioned last year. If you can't, the Shulchan Aruch says if you don't have any poor people on Purim, you could set the money aside and then give it after Purim to poor people that you'll send to after Purim. There's a question: could you be yoitze by giving Matanas Salvenim before Purim, and it will reach a poor person on Purim? So according to a lot of people, it seems you are yoitze. Question is, if you have to do it, do I have an obligation before Purim to send to make sure it reaches a poor person on Purim, or could I just wait until Purim? And if there's no poor people, just keep the money, designate money, then give it to a poor person after Purim. It would seem that it's better to give it to a poor person, now that to send it before Purim, that it should reach him on Purim, than to give it separated on Purim and to give it after Purim. But if you give it before Purim, you have a problem, because if he uses it up before Purim, you've lost the thing. The point is, you should have it on Purim. So it gets a bit kind of complex. You should maybe make sure that it gets them on Purim, or tell them that you only give it to him on tonight, use it on Purim, whatever it might be. Mishleich Manos is the same thing. I mean, today, it's, in today's day and age, I don't think it's a big deal for somebody to send Mishleich Manos, but let's say if somebody's sending him Mishleich Manos through the mail, so he sends it before Purim, it reaches a person on Purim. So again, there's different opinions. Some people say that it goes based on the receiver. The receiver got it on Purim Yiyetzu. Other people say you have to do it on Purim, you have to send it on Purim. You didn't send it on Purim. But vice versa, if you send it on Purim, and the guy's only going to get it a week later in the mail, the Zeichet is very, it's not so simple to say that helps. So to avoid all questions, at least to be kind of there's plenty of living in communities, plenty of Jews around.
Yeah, listen to this. I mean, my parents are in Israel, in Yerushalayim. They keep on Friday.
Right.
I can call up someone who does the Shalach Manas over there on Purim to give it to them on their Purim.
That's true. But if that would be the only one you would be sending Mishleich Manas to, I would tell you that it's not so poshut, because you're doing it on your Purim, that it's their Purim, but when they're getting it on their Purim, it's not your Purim.
But the truth is, by the time if you give it in Purim afternoon, and over there it's Purim, it's already Purim by night.
But now you're expecting it by night.
Oh, you know?
Mishleich Manas and Asavin, this Purim has to be by day.
Well, that's why the bracha is Shechion as well.
Yeah. It would be ideal if you give, again, the 2 poor people, they get it on Purim, and you gave it on Purim, and the same thing is for Mishleich Manas. Now, regarding listening to the Megillah, I mentioned it before. It's a few more pratim I'm going to mention. When you're listening, following along to the Megillah, from the Chazan is reading the Megillah, so he has obviously a kosher Megillah, and everybody else, some have a kosher Megillah, some don't have a kosher Megillah. So those that have a kosher Megillah, matoiv manoim, they should follow along in their kosher Megillah. Some that don't have a kosher Megillah, they should still follow along with the Chazan in a printed Megillah, not to say the words, but to follow along inside. Either it's a Chumash or another printed Megillah, and there's 2 main advantages that you have. First of all, when you read the Megillah, you have to pay attention. Somebody's sitting in the room and somebody's reading from the bima there. After 5 minutes, you're probably starting to think about the walls and everything else that's going on around you. So So basically, you're not the sound might be bouncing off your eardrum. Right. So your sound might be bouncing off your eardrums, but you're not really listening. You're not following along. So it becomes a whole, it's very questionable to say this is a proper kriyas Megillah Yotze. So if you follow along, so even if your mind starts wandering, but at least you're focused on the Megillah you're hearing. You're reading along with them. So then it helps that you're following along with the Megillah. Another mile is in case you miss a few words. If you miss a word of the Megillah, it's a problem. You have to say that word. Not only have to say that word, but you have to hear the Megillah, the whole Megillah. You have to hear in the proper sequence, in proper order. So if you miss a word, if you didn't hear that word, if you're going to catch up the word later, after you already heard the rest of the Megillah, it won't help. You have to hear from that word and on until the end of the Megillah. So if you have, even if you don't have a kosher Megillah, if you have a printed Megillah, it would help that if you missed a few words from the Chazan, you could say them quickly by yourself. And quickly, not just to say those few words that you missed, but quickly catch up until the Chazan. So like this, and then remain silent. It's not kedai to read the whole Megillah by yourself from a printed Megillah, because then you're hearing yourself, not hearing the Chazan, and you're not reading from a printed. If you're reading from a printed Megillah, you don't have a kosher Megillah, you're not going to be Yetza. So you should quickly rush up until where the Chazan, and then remain silent, and you'll be Yetza like with the rest of with the rest of Megillah from the Chazan. So that's another advantage of having.
That's the reason
why you're able to catch up. Yeah. So that's another advantage of having a following along a printed Megillah for those few words they need to catch up. Now, I'm going to mention this just the Shleimus Inyan. There's a whole discussion regarding if a person reads by heart or if he reads from a non-kosher Megillah, the beginning and the end in Inyan Shalom. I'll explain what I mean. There's a halacha, it's an interesting halacha, which is that Sefer Torah that's missing one letter is possible. A Megillah, even though Lechatchila is supposed to be written properly, but if it's missing some words or letters, it's kosher, as long as it's not missing half, up to half. And there's another tonight, the beginning and end have to be there, and it can't be missing an Inyan Shalom. You can't be missing a complete thing. Now, for example, you could have a complete thing could be a page or two, or a complete thing could be a few psukim. Let's say the story of Big Sin and Serish. It's a few psukim, but it's Inyan Shalom. Or even that Serish Pnei Haman. It's 10 lines, whatever it is. According to some people, it's Inyan Shalom. It's a complete Inyan. Or Vayibim, right at the beginning, at the end, it's also very short, but it's Ma'akid. So now you have to hear the whole Megillah. Every word you have to hear. But if you have a Megillah that's missing some words, and the Baal Kodesh says the rest of the words by heart, you're Yoitza, because the Megillah, he's reading from a kosher Megillah, and he did, as long as he doesn't say the beginning, and if the Megillah is not missing an Inyan Shalom, it's not missing a complete thing, and it's not missing the beginning and the end, and it's not missing more than it's missing less than half the letters, the word, whatever it might be, but the evidence will be okay. So what happens, let's say somebody came to shul late, a few seconds late, and the Chazan is already holding chveis a few psukim down the road, and he starts saying to himself, this now becomes b'chal ha'ol shayla, what to do with the brachas, but fine, let's not get into that. So he's going to say, she'll say the first few psukim from his printed Megillah, until he catches up. So the question is, if somebody says not from a kosher Megillah, the parts that if they wouldn't have been written in a Megillah would make the Megillah non-kosher. So there's the same thing, the same way if it wouldn't have been written in the Megillah would be not kosher. Doesn't make the same thing that if somebody said it by heart, he's not Yotze. So there's a bir halacha. The Mishnah Berurah seems to be makel on this. He brings us different opinions that he seems to be makel. I saw there's one achron that wants to say the Mishnah Berurah is only talking about that it's a kosher Megillah, not pasim Megillah. But I'm not going to get into that. I don't think that with that particular contemporary posuk says is necessarily that what he's saying is you have to say. But it would seem that Mishnah Berurah seems to be a whole that the main point here is that in the Megillah it shouldn't be missing the beginning and end or Inyan Shalom. That if somebody had to catch up from the Chazan and he said from a printed Megillah, as long as he didn't say half, more from a printed Megillah, even if he said the beginning and then, whatever it is, he would be it. But again, it's definitely worthwhile to try to avoid this question. As you see, even the Mishnah is Machlekes Achreinim really. The Mishnah Berurah sides with one of the opinions, but obviously one should try to avoid that issue of saying the beginning and the end, or Inyan Shalom, a complete thing from a printed Megillah, not hearing it from the Chazan. That's reading from a kosher Megillah. Another thing is like this. People that have a kosher Megillah, I mentioned this before, I just want to follow up on it. People that are reading from a kosher Megillah, in other words, they're following along from a kosher Megillah. So the Rebbe, like when you see on the videos, the Rebbe used to read along the Megillah with the Chazan. That's the meaning of many people, they read it along together with the Chazan. Now, like I mentioned in the past, if you're reading along with the Chazan, if you have a kosher Megillah, you could read along. If you have a post, if you have a printed Megillah, you shouldn't read along, because then you'll be listening to the Chazan. You're not going to be listening. Then you're not going to listen to the Chazan, listening to your own voice, which you're reading from a printed Megillah. But if you're reading from if you're reading from a kosher Megillah, so then you could read along. But now you can't read along too loud, because then you're going to disturb other people. Even though technically, if other people hear from you, it's not the end of the world, because you're reading from a kosher Megillah, but they have to have a mind to be, if you're going to disturb them from hearing from the Chazan, they have to have a mind to be yetzer from you, and you have to have a mind to be yetzer them also. And it could just be that they're just going to get confused, they're not, they're going to think that, whatever, you're not going to have a mind, they're not going to have a mind, weiter. So obviously you shouldn't read too loud to disturb people around you. Now, to read to yourself, want to make sure that you're yotza. Ideally, you should read loud enough that you should be able to hear. Because there's a whole discussion in Achronim, what if somebody read the Megillah but he didn't hear what he said? So it would seem...
In other words, he doesn't understand? Or
he didn't know, he verbalized it, but he didn't say it loud enough that he should hear it.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't reach his eardrums. So it seems there's a machlekes in Achronim on this. And the halacha where it really plays itself out is if a chedish, somebody that's deaf, he can't hear but he could read. If he reads the Megillah, if people are yotze, if he reads the Megillah or not. It's machlekes achronim. It would have seemed that the mechaber holds he's not yotze the Megillah. You're not yotze the Megillah from hearing from him. So based on that poskim, right, that it would appear that if a person reads the Megillah and he didn't hear, he's also not yotze. But other Achronim disagree with the Mechaber in this, and they say, the Magen Avram and others, they say that if somebody was deaf and he's able to hear, he's not able to hear, but he's able to read, so he could be motzi other people hearing the Megillah. So according to that, would seem, according to the simple way of looking at it, that even if somebody reads the Megillah, but he didn't hear it, he's yotze. So if a person is following along a kosher Megillah and he wants to be yotze, he shouldn't. L'choira would make sense to say you should say it loud, that you should be able to hear. I don't know what the Rebbe did, that I can't tell you. But he should say it, but in other words, if you will disturb other people, maybe it's better you should just say it low, and at least, rely on the, try to hear from the Chazan. And if he misses a few words, I guess it's best to say that a bit loud. But if he doesn't miss, if you could anyway hear the Chazan, to say it quietly, and not to say it, if you're going to disturb other people, to say it quietly. Okay, if you're able to say it, only you should hear, nobody else should hear, it's fine, not even annoying, but if it's going to, by you saying it, order that you should be able to hear, it's going to disturb other people, then it might be kedai just to say it quietly, and make sure, if you actually miss words from the Chazan, that you don't hear from the Chazan, say that loud, that you should be able to hear. Fine. If a person has a suffix, if he was yotze the Megillah, what do I mean? If he had, let's say he doesn't know if he missed a word or not. Like I mentioned, Matzah Shabbos, there's a difference in the chiyuv of the reading of the Megillah by night and the reading of the Megillah by day. By night, it's a derabbanon. By night, it's the poskim right that is considered a regular derabbanon. By day, it's a more of a severe type of derabbanon. It's something that we call divrei Kabbalah. It's something that's mentioned in the Tanakh. Now, by regular derabbanon, you could say savi derabbanon lakul. If you don't know if you yotze Mr. derabbanon, you don't have to do it over again, because if it's a derabbanon, you could be making. But by day, since it's divrei Kabbalah, since it's part of the takana that's in the Megillah, it's Esther itself, it's part of the Tanakh, it's a more stricter form of a derabbanon. And according to a number of poskim, if you have a suffix, if you yotze divrei Kabbalah, you have to be go lechumra, like midiraisa. Just like if you have a suffix, if you yotze shofar, you would have to hear again. The same thing is, they would say that by Megillah by day would be the same thing. Now, other people disagree and say that even by divrei Kabbalah, it's also a suffix. If you have a suffix for yotze divrei Kabbalah, you make it. But I don't know what the halach is, but it according to a number of poskim, it's definitely you're not yotze by a suffix divrei Kabbalah. So if you have a question on the Megillah by day, you speak to your local rabbi and see what he has to say. But obviously, a person should always try to avoid shilas. And I'm not going to get, somebody that reading the Megillah, there's a lot of different diyukim lach that he would have to know to make sure not to.
And where it goes?
Make sure not to mess up the meaning of a word, which could make the whole thing no good. But anyway, okay.
Shkoyach, shkoyach.